In this video, I'm going to break down the direct capitalization method. So by the end of the video, you're going to know exactly what to do when you see this exam question on your course 4 real estate exam. Okay, so let's actually take a look at a few examples of how the direct cap method works and exactly how you're going to see it in your real estate exam. So first of all, we got these two formulas that we need. We have this thing called the NOI method, which is basically our main formula. So we take our market value and we basically take the NOI and divide it by the capitalization rate. So I went through this in my other video, which I'll put over here if you want to check it out. That's where I go through LTV, a few loans for C4, and I kind of introduce a little bit of this. So all in all, we're looking for essentially how do we find the value of this property that we're looking at. Okay, that's what the market value is going to be. And our net operating income is the income the business is going to be making. Now, looking at the second formula, keep this in mind. This is where we're going to take the gross income of the business and subtract the expenses. So what we're really looking for is after we make money and then we pay off all our expenses, what do we have left? That is our net operating income. However, keep in mind, this is called net operating income because it only deals with the operating income. So only the sort of money that is put towards operating expenses. So if there are things that you pay for that are not operating expenses, that are not directly involved in the direct line of the business, we're not going to include them. Okay, we're going to get into all of that. For now, just keep this in mind. This is our formula. This is the other formula we need, and we're going to see how we use them. Now, a very easy way to remember is this thing called the IRV Triangle. This is how we actually will be able to remember the formula itself. So it kind of depends what you like better. Some people like the formula better, some people like this better. But in general, what we're doing is we're taking this I, and that equals R times V. Okay? In other words, our income equals our cap rate times our value. So what we do this formula is basically, if I want to find this thing here, this income, I'm going to essentially take the remaining two formulas, and I'm going to do V times R. So in other words, I equals, well, if I put the other way around, V times R. Okay? If I want to find V, right, if I want to find the value of this property, then I simply do the remaining two operations, which is I divided by R. So in that case, V equals I divided by R. And if I want to find the cap rate, right, R, then I do the remaining two operations, which is I divided by V. So R would equal I divided by V. So in other words, these are our three kind of formulas. Again, they're the same formula, we just kind of rearrange them. Okay. Now keep in mind, when we say this formula, we say I, we say income. Depends on the type of question you get. Sometimes they will give you a question where you're just going to get an income. They might give you income of, let's say, 25,000. This is our income over here, right? So they just give you this sort of income, and if they only give you this income, then this is the only thing that you're going to take into account, and you're going to use this into your formula. You do your, V divided equals I divided by R. That's totally fine. If, however, they give you expenses, that's where we're going to need to now do gross income minus expenses. So this is all going to make sense in a second. Just keep in mind mainly what this triangle looks like. And if you like this triangle, it's basically a really good way to remember the formulas and everything. So let's do an example. So we have a real estate investor, and they're evaluating an apartment building that generates an annual net operating income, NOI, of $120,000. If similar properties in the market have a capitalization rate of 6%, what is the estimated value of the property using the direct cap method? So we have our net operating income, right? We have our capitalization rate. Now, if you don't already know, cap rate, you don't need to know what it is for the exam. You're just going to need to plug it into your formula. But if you're curious, cap rate essentially tells us whether a property is going to be profitable for us as an investment or not. Usually, the higher the cap rate, the more profitable it is. Anyhow, in this case, we have our net operating income, which is 120, and we have our cap rate, which is 6%. So they're asking us to find the value. So first thing is we got to find the value. So we go over here, we look at our triangle. If we want to find the value, right, we're going to do income, right, and then we do remaining two operations divided by our cap rate. In other words, we're going to say our value equals income divided by cap rate. So value equals NOI divided by the cap rate. And all we do is plug in the numbers, and then we get our answer, which is $2 million. Okay, and that's pretty much it. So this is one of the variations of the question you might get. This is the simplest. All you do is you take these numbers, right? 120, we divide it by the 6%. That's what we did here. And then we finally get our value. Okay? So that was the first example. Now, there is a second example where they will give you, make it a little bit harder for you. So that's where we get this one here. So, and keep in mind, we have the formulas on the side. So I'll zoom out just so you guys can see the formulas as well. So, example number 2. This is a multiple choice question. So this is more likely kind of what you're going to see in the exam. So we have an investor, and they're analyzing an office building that generates a gross rental income of $250,000 per year. The property incurs the following expenses annually: property taxes, maintenance repairs, property management fees, mortgage payments, and depreciation. The question is, if similar properties in the area have a capitalization rate of 7%, what is the estimated market value of the property using the direct capitalization method? Okay, so normally what we would do is we take the income, 250, and we divide it by the cap rate, right? Wrong. So here we have a gross rental income and we have expenses. Remember, like I said before, if they don't give you expenses, you take the income, you run with it, right? You put it in your formula and you're all good. If, however, they give you expenses, now we have to do this formula over here. We have to do our gross income minus our operating expenses first, then we find NOI. And then we can put this into our formula and then we're all good. So one small additional step. However, with this question, remember we said we have to take out operating expenses, not all the expenses. And this is the tricky part. So let's go to the side here and let's just look at some of the few kind of key tips that we're going to need for this. So first of all, few key tips. Non-operating expenses, they are going to exclude these things over here. So we're going to exclude from NOI, non-operating expenses, mortgage payments, so debt service, any depreciation, and any capital expenditures, things that usually take a lot of money to do, like major renovations, a new roof, HVAC replacements, and structural component upgrades. All of these are excluded from our operating expenses, and so they're excluded from our calculation. So what we do now is, we keep this triangle in mind. So just so you can see the triangle. So what we're going to do is we're first going to calculate the NOI, net operating income. We want to do our gross income minus our operating expenses. But here what we actually do is we're only going to include a few things. So if I go up to the question, as you guys see here, we have property taxes, maintenance repairs, property management fees, mortgage payments, depreciation. Because when I go over here and I see mortgage payments and depreciation are not included in the operating expenses, we are not going to include it in this calculation. So the only numbers we include, 30,000, 15,000, 10,000, are property taxes, 30,000, maintenance and repairs, 15,000, and property management fees, 10,000. We do not include mortgage and we do not include depreciation because they are not operating expenses. Okay, so that's the first thing we do. We minus those out, we get our number, and we get an NOI of 195,000. Okay, so that was the first step. Now, if you remember, when we go back to the question, you're going to see we have a capitalization rate of 7%. Okay, and our gross income was $250,000 for the year. So we go back down here, right? We have our cap rate of 7%. Now our step 2 is we're actually going to apply this triangle formula. We're actually going to apply it for the question that we need. So I'm going to scroll down, and now we're going to do value equals NOI divided by cap rate, right? We want to find the income, so that's your value times your cap rate. Okay, so we put in the numbers. Our value, our NOI is 195,000. We divide it by our 7% cap rate, and then we come up with a value of 2,785,000 and change. Okay, so actually looking at this answer then, our answer is going to be 2,785,000 and change. And so we go up to our question and our answer will be letter B. So 2,785,000. on the exam, chances are you're not going to get anything as difficult as the second example we just did, but you may get something where they give you an operating expense and then you have to just minus that out from the gross income. So they may not make you choose like how we did here. I was just giving you guys a difficult examples just in case, just to prepare. But chances are they're only going to give you one expense, one income, and one cap rate. And as long as you can remember minus expense from income, then take that number, the NOI, and divide it by your cap rate, then you will be fine and you'll be totally good for this question. Okay. It's also very useful if you're doing the exam in person to remember this triangle. To remember this triangle and then to write it down, on a piece of paper as soon as you get in, because it can be very helpful for you if you're not good at math or formulas and all of that. Okay, so hopefully that covered most of the questions that you have about this. Hopefully it was a good explanation. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe, let me know your feedback, and be sure to rewatch the video if you need to kind of look at the examples again. That is it. Be sure to check out some of the other videos I have on Course 4 on this channel, and I will see you guys in the next video. See you then.